Hello, my friends. Welcome once again to Spiritism, a closer look on Kardec Radio. Luiz Lima here in Orlando, Florida. Tonight, we're going to take a closer look at what we call the contraction of the Perispirit. This is actually part 2 of what we originally called the phases of reincarnation. We had this program last week where we developed some ideas around the process of reincarnation, and we spoke about the 3 phases of reincarnation. Just as a reminder, reincarnation, this process of natural evolution, involves moral and intellectual development of the spirit, and each incarnating spirit brings in their own characteristics for each incarnation. He seeks a particular goal or a set of goals in each incarnation. So every incarnation or reincarnation, even for the same spirit, is unique. There's no like one size fits all model for reincarnation. Never. All processes of reincarnation are different in their particularities and the characteristics, but they all follow the same law. And what we are going to talk about today is this law, the general sequence of events. Last week, we mentioned the 3 phases of reincarnation. In the 3rd phase, we named it the contraction of the Perispirit. What we're going to do is today, we're going to take this 3rd phase and explore in more details. That's why we call this today the contraction of the Perispirit. This is a process that starts before conception. When planning, which we already spoke about last week, when planning for the incarnation, these, if you will, architects and engineers helping the incarnating spirits all together, they look at the guiding charts. They are revised and reviewed to make sure everything is so they all give themselves the green light to go ahead with the process and help the incarnating spirits to get into the flesh. So before earthly rematerialization even begins, even before that, the bodies, the limbs, the organs, the fibers, and the cells are checked out and studied to make sure the process is going to be successful. DNA is looked at, all of those things. Now, the incarnating spirit, it could be a more advanced spirit with a lot of merit, or it could be a spirit down on the scale with demerit, or anything in between. So when the spirit oscillates between, the extremes, the authorities of the spiritual justice will have a say in that incarnation process. They will be like, do this, don't do that. They're counselors. We suggest you go this way on your incarnation, not that way. We suggest you, don't take this particular expiation now, take it a later life. Because the spirit doesn't have a solid, consistent way of behaving. So it goes from one point to another, it's good, and now it's bad, it does good, it does evil. That's why these spiritual justice spirits will have a say in it. High order spirits can nearly always, by the way, shape their own physical body. However, the contraction of the Perispirit is more difficult because they have to give up some freedom. We spoke about this last week. For example, they will be limited to the 5 senses that the physical body is. When they are much more advanced spirits, they can do a lot more, but they will be limited by that. And less advanced spirits will settle easier to this adjustment because they are more prone to material bonds bond to material things, material life, material physical body. lower order spirits, we spoke about this too. In most cases, they become slaves of physical inheritance. They can choose their bodies, their DNA. They will be, especially lower orders, really lower order spirits, they will have no say on their DNA. So those in between, lower order spirits and higher order spirits, have to go through this preparation layer, if you will. What happens here is discarnate magnetizers will apply soothing fluids to them. So they will pass through this process where discarnate magnetizers apply fluids to them. And this occurs by magnetic action. Now, for this to take place, the purpose of this taking place is that the reincarnating spirit pairs in affinity with the instructors presiding the reincarnation process. Now, in modern terms, it's like a Bluetooth. You have to pair this device with this one so they can communicate and trade information. Same thing here. The incarnating spirit has to be in full affinity with their instructors. That's why these discarnate magnetizers apply these soothing fluids to make the process happen more easily and faster. So once that takes place, once that happens, the reincarnating spirit is invited and induced to participate in the process, in the palingenesis. Now, for the success of the operation, the incarnating spirit must have three things in mind. If the spirit doesn't bring those three things with them, process fails. One, it has to remember its fetal organization or format that was planned before. It has to have that in mind. Number two, it has to visualize its entry into a material body. So it has to have the mindset that he's going to go through that process. And third, it has to have the desire to be small, because you will go through a process of reduction of the perispirit, which we're going to go into a minute into this. So the reincarnating spirit itself has to contribute mentally to the process. If it doesn't, it will not go ahead. It fails. The process fails. So the whole thing, the operation, let's say, starts with the concurrence of the supporting spirits and the reincarnating spirit. The next thing that's going to happen is the reduction of the perispirit. What is this? It's a process where there's going to be a diminution of the intermolecular spaces. Yeah, shrink. Under the influence of powerful magnetic currents that the spirits are in there providing to the reincarnating spirit. So they will, through these powerful magnetic currents, they will be able to create this, to reduce the perispirit of the incarnating spirit. Once this is in place on the physical plane and physical matter, what's happening is that the sperms are on their journey towards the egg, and there's going to be only one sperm that penetrates the egg. And that sperm is the one that has been magnetically driven by one of the mentors in most cases that are helping the incarnating spirits. That's why they have to undergo, prior to anything, look at these charts and body and cells and all of these, to be able to determine when the process starts after the sexual union, which sperm is going to be the chosen one, which is the one more likely to make the process occur smoothly. So once the chosen, put it this way, the chosen sperm reaches the egg with a bunch of them. They're all around the egg, but the chosen one will get this magnetic, powerful current that will make him, go through the membrane of the egg and penetrate the egg. From the membrane of the egg towards the center, there's a physical distance that the sperm has to perform. It will take the sperm 4 minutes to get from the outer membrane into the center of the egg. 4 minutes. When it gets in there, then there's going to be a fusion of genetic material between the egg and that one sperm. So this is a process, not a snap of fingers. This process alone will take about 15 minutes. 15 minutes for this fusion between protoplasms to occur. At the end of this 15 minutes, the incarnating spirit is going to launch a fluidic tie, which is nothing more than an expansion of its perispirit. And that will form the initial link between the perispirit and the physical matter. And that happens through the mother's genetic center into the uterus. Incredible. Incredible. So this fluidic tie, it's the key moment in the whole process. When the fluidic tie reaches the physical matter, the first cell, the one cell body, that is the conception. That is when, let's use this word, ownership starts. So from that point on, the incarnating spirit will be the driving force for this new body that it is being formed. You see, so the process wraps up, per se, when the spirit, the incarnating spirit, takes ownership of the physical matter. Because supposedly you will be able to take it from here and go on its journey. So the consolidation of the process is exactly that, when the spirit takes ownership of the first cell. Now, throughout past lives, the sum of all past lives and past experiences, this is what we call spiritual history. So spiritual history is the set of all experiences acquired in the past. That spiritual history reveals itself in the form of tendencies and impulses. So the spirit will have to experience the new ownership, per se, but he will bring those tendencies and impulses still in the uterus. So some spirits are going to make an easier pregnancy for the woman, for the mother. Some will make it more difficult. And it's not because of the mother. It's because of the spirit, the incarnating spirit. One of the things the incarnating spirit has to experiment here, right here, is the forgetfulness of the past, which is another separate topic, but you will have to go through the process during the contraction of the perispirit. So once that's all done, once the spirit is now the owner of the first cell, per se, it has a fluidic tie into this first cell. This fluidic tie is very tenuous, is very thin. It's easier, it's relatively easy for things to go wrong. So the spirit has to be really concentrated and bring this with him, this thing about, I'm gonna succeed, because this tie is very, very, very weak. In the beginning, the tie gets stronger as pregnancy advances until the physical birth. And then it's a much, outside the uterus, it's a much firmer connection. Now, the journey itself, once the spirit passes through all of this, it could be favorable or unfavorable. It depends on the circumstances according to the purpose of the incarnation. So if the incarnation is for something to correct a tremendous wrongdoing of the past, it's going to be a relatively bumpy journey, or the other way around, it's going to be more favorable. To the point that sometimes spirits will have to endure beneficial deformities and infirmities and inhibitions and problems with organic difficulties. All of this has a greater purpose. God does not make anything happen that's not necessary or to punish anybody. It is for the spirit's own benefit. It might not seem to, he might not understand it, but it is. It always is. That's about divine justice. All spirits have the same opportunity, and we all have free will. We do wrong things, there are consequences. We do good things, there are consequences, but these are good. So anything that we do is on us. We're going to have to offset if we do anything evil. And we advance when we do something good. These things that we spoke about, this, going through this process of contraction of the Perispirit, is narrated in two books, primarily. The first book is, both of them actually, are by Spirit André Luiz. The first book is called Missionaries of the Light, on chapter 13, where André Luiz talks about the phases of the incarnation and the contraction of the Perispirit for an upcoming birth of a spirit called Segismundo. And it's a very interesting thing. It narrates in details, most of them we spoke about today, and on the past life too. Another book, Between Heaven and Earth, also by Spirit André Luiz, chapter 29, describes about the same thing, the process of perispirit contraction, experiences and difficulties that the spirit has to go through and experiment for to be able to incarnate, to produce a new physical body and go on his journey. So all of these things are very interesting. And we are just glad that we have the opportunity to learn all these things. We have all this information, which I think I spoke about this on last week as well, which makes us value life a lot more than if we didn't know any of these things. It's incredible what goes on behind the scenes. So each one of us, you and I, can reincarnate, can be here, can use our incarnation to the best of our ability. And it doesn't make sense to be negative. It doesn't make sense to live around revenge and rage and anything like this. It doesn't make any sense. Everything that happened before our incarnation and preparation and everything was all good. There's nothing bad. And same thing, when we go back to the other side, back home, it's all going to be good again. So there's a purpose in everything. There's a clear purpose in us incarnating, and there's a clear purpose in us having to go through different lives, because our wrongdoings have to be offset. And to offset wrongdoings one at a time, at least one at a time, or maybe to offset one wrongdoing, maybe it takes me 4 lives, 10 lives, depends. But on each life, I'm going to have a different body with a different DNA that serves the purpose. And again, that DNA on higher order spirits, it is adjustable. It is adjustable. It can be adjusted by the spirit and or the mentors with them at the time of conception. So the incarnation has its purpose as it should. Lower order spirits do not have access to that. They have to rely on the physicality of the DNA, which is well explained by Mendel's law of genetics. And that's it. You have to go with, that DNA on your journey. So they don't have much control. Anyhow, I think that's what we needed to bring to you about reincarnation, the process of reincarnation in these past 2 lives, last week and today. And one thing that I always refer to several times here, I speak about lower order spirits, higher order spirits, and this is in relation to something called the spirit scale that you see here on the right side of your screen. And we had about 2 of our programs talking in details about this. So I urge you to always go back. The name of the program is Spirit Scale. So it is something that we when we understand to the level that we should, and that's what we try to do on this program, things can change in our favor. We can see life in a different way, just as much as these 2 programs that we did last week and this week about understanding the process of life coming about, life beginning, the beginning of reincarnation. It is incredibly complex, but once we understand, we only see beauty in front of us. Thank you very much for following us here today once again. And we will be back here next week with another Spiritism Closer Look every Wednesday at 7